fell to Rome once more. The Parthians quickly evacuated the province. Now in the following year, 164, the Romans invaded Assyria and Mesopotamia proper, just like Trajan did a few years earlier. The Romans under Aurelius Cassius, now we see Aurelius Cassius again, this Greek guy, this Greek aristocrat. They defeated the Parthians near the Ephatus River with the use of catapults, onagers and scorpions and other missiles. See, it was long range, so they hit the Parthians back with their own tactics. Now in the following year, 165, the Romans finally captured all of Mesopotamia and Assyria. Aurelius Cassius defeated the Parthians in a pitched battle somewhere in the province. The Romans captured and burnt Seleucia. Seleucia, at the Tigris River, was a Greek colony, and what happened was that Aurelius Cassius, he entered the city as an ally. You see, he was a Greek himself, most of the colonists were Greeks also, and he pretended to be their friends. But what happened was that he betrayed them, he treacherously attacked them, and he killed many of them, and they even sacked the temple of Apollo, which was considered to be blasphemy, sacrilege. Soon after that, the Romans captured Ctesiphon. Statius Priscus captured Dura Evropos, a city with a large Jewish community. The Romans also captured Babylon, and they seized many treasures. Now, because of the ancients believed that because the Romans they looted the temples and they captured gold, they were punished by a plague, and truly a plague, a serious plague broke out in 165. So even though the Parthians were humiliated and driven out of Mesopotamia, Syria, and Armenia proper, and the smaller kingdoms of Sorini or Duini, the Romans got a plague instead of a victory. And we also see that Lucius Verus, the co-emperor, he actually did nothing about the Parthians and the Armenians and their other allies. He spent most of his time partying, hunting, drinking, reading poetry at Antioch. He stayed back at Antioch, and it was Marcus Aurelius in Rome who directed affairs with his captains. Priscus, Aurelius Cassius and the other commanders. And the people learned to despise Lucius Verus. The people soon realized that it was Marcus Aurelius who was the true leader. Now in the following year, the Romans were faced by large Germanic and Scythian tribes and Dacian tribes. It was a large coalition. Now the Longobards, some 6,000 strong, they reached the Danube, and Marcus Vindex defeated them in a pitched battle. Soon afterwards, the force of Aurelius Cassius crossed the Danube, and they massacred 3,000 Sarmatians. And again we see how cruel and ruthless Aurelius Cassius was. He discovered that some of his officers didn't actually take part in this campaign across the Danube, and he had them arrested and crucified. Why? For being on the offensive? Doesn't really make sense, does it? Meanwhile, Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus, who had recently returned from Antioch, they marched to northern Italy, and they defeated a group of Germans. Now, on the return journey, Lucius Verus died at the city of Atinium of an apoplexy, and Marcus Aurelius became the sole ruler. The fourth battle took place when Helvidius Pertinax defeated the Germans at Raetia. Now, after Marcus Aurelius is appointed sole emperor, he was lucky enough to have 4 years of peace. And during this time, he could supplement his forces by the youngsters that were of the military age. The people began to recover from the plagues. Now, 170 was a terrible year for Rome. In 170, Rome nearly fell. There were wars in all fronts. It was truly amazing, the coalition that took place. Now the Kostovoks were a small Dacian tribe. They rebelled from Rome, and they crossed the Danube. They crossed parts of Thrace, Macedonia, Thessaly, and they went as far south as Phokis, and they reached a small town called Elabia. Now how they marched so far south is unknown. And then a small Greek militia under the commander Minisovolos defeated them in a battle. However, the commander himself was killed. Now the Mauritanians, Berber tribesmen, they crossed from Morocco, what is today Morocco. They went to Spain, the province of Vetica, and some other parts of Spain, and they raided it. And a group of unknown legates marched to Spain, and they defeated them. Again, we don't really know what happened or who these legates were. It is clearly stated by the sources that there was a lack of manpower during this year. And Aurelius, to fill the gaps, we see that thousands of people were killed. The Romans were killed. Some of them were killed in battles, some of them were killed in the civil wars that took place after the death of Nero. We see pestilence. And Marcus Aurelius was forced to free and to train slaves, gladiators, and he brought robbers from Dalmatia and Dardania, and they were incorporated in the Roman forces. Now, now the Romans defeated the Quadi and the Marcomanni in battle on the Danube, and the German force included female warriors, Amazon warriors too. Now we see that the Quadi and the Marcomanni, according to Florus, in 8 AD, the Quadi and the Marcomanni, they could muster a force of 70,000 men. That was in 8 AD. So in 170 AD, and the Romans, under Tiberius, Augustus was still alive back then, and his successor Tiberius was there, and he declined battle. So 162 years later, these 70,000 men would soon multiply. And so we can see how dangerous they were in this year. Thankfully, they were defeated by Claudius Pompeianus, who married Marcus Aurelius' daughter, Lucilla, and Helvius Pertinax, the future emperor. Now, sadly, Verus Caesar, one of Marcus Aurelius' sons, died of the pestilence, of an ailment. Another German force crossed into northern Italy, and they captured and sacked the cities of Opidergium, and they besieged Aquileia. Meanwhile, the Roman force under Clemens defeated the Lacringi, who were either a German force or a Dacian force. Another group of German federates who were settled in Italy, they rebelled and they captured Ravenna, and Ravenna later became Rome's capital city, not Rome, not Medolianum, Ravenna. So they captured Ravenna, and Marcus Aurelius sent a force and they drove them out of Ravenna and they killed them. But we don't actually know who did it or how they did it. So we see that the Romans faced war in all fronts, and they suffered from a lack of manpower. In the following year, 171, Marcus Vindex was defeated and killed in a battle with the Marcomanni. And Marcus Aurelius himself marched north and he defeated them in a second battle. 172 AD, the following year, a group of Egyptian peasants called the Vocoli, which in Latin means people of a pasture, they rebelled under a priest called Isidorus. They killed several centurions placed in several cities. They defeated a Roman legion in battle, and they even attacked Alexandria themselves, but they were repelled from the walls. And who else? Avidius Cassius arrived in Egypt, and he subdued them. We don't actually know how he did it. 174, the following year, Marcus Aurelius himself fought a hard battle with a coalition of Germans and Sarmatian and Scythian tribesmen. In the earlier stages of the battle, the Germans were winning, but then the solstice talk of divine intervention. There was rain pouring in the faces of the Germans, and there was lightning that struck the Germans themselves. And after that, the Romans got courage and they defeated their enemies. Soon after that, the Romans seized the German chieftain Aurelius and they sent him to Alexandria as an imperial hostage. Meanwhile, a German force, the Hafki, they invaded Belgium, the province of Belgica, but they were defeated by Helvius Pertinax, the future emperor. And meanwhile, Julius Julianus, the future emperor, defeated a force of Hatti in battle, but we don't know where or how. Now in the following year, 175, Julius Julianus and Helvius Pertinax, the two future emperors, were appointed consuls for the great victories against the German tribes in the following and in the previous year, in the sort of thanks. Now Marcus Aurelius himself defeated a group of Scythian Iazyes in battle, and the reason why he was defeated because the battle took place in the frozen Danube, and the barbarian Scythians, they began to slip over. They could not form proper military positions, and that's why they were defeated. But then Marcus Aurelius became ill, and Faustina, his wife, played a dirty game. Now practically everyone knew, and Marcus Aurelius included, that his wife Faustina had an affair with the rising star, Aurelius Cassius. He actually knew about it. The Historia Augusta mentions that he actually caught them having breakfast together. He just walked off. The reason why Marcus Aurelius didn't arrest or execute Aurelius Cassius was that he didn't want to blacken his name in the Senate by killing one of his commanders. So he turned a blind eye to what Aurelius Cassius was actually doing. And Faustina sent Aurelius Cassius, who was in Egypt, and he recently restored the province. She sent a letter that Aurelius was dying, so he could assume power. And most of the soldiers who were stationed in Egypt actually believed that. The commander Flavius Calvicinus and a few other senators, they went along with Aurelius Cassius. Aurelius Cassius also tried to bribe the commanders of Cappadocia and Bithynia to rebel, but they refused to do so, thankfully. Now Marcus Aurelius soon recovered from his illness. He made a truce with the Scythians and he marched to Egypt. Now some of the Scythian tribes then they offered to help Rome against the usurper. So you see, so from that we can see there was a sense of honour and pride in the Germans and the Scythians. They might have been fighting to the death with the Romans, but when they learned, they admired actually, Marcus Aurelius actually, and when they heard about the usurpation of Aurelius Cassius, they offered to help him. But he refused that help, out of a sense of pride. Now, before Aurelius even arrived in Alexandria, the Romans realized that Aurelius was not dead at all, and Aurelius Cassius had actually betrayed them. And they killed Cassius and one of his sons. Now, Aurelius, he did not hurt anyone, and even Flavius Calvisius, the governor who had betrayed him, he was simply exiled to an island with a small guard. He even burnt all the incriminating evidence, all the papers, so that no one could be prosecuted, then and in the future. Aurelius Cassius died after a rule of 3 months and a few days. So that was the end of one of Rome's finest generals at the time. In the following year, 176, and we see how Marcus Aurelius was lenient. But some historians accuse Marcus Aurelius of not being actually lenient, but being hypocritical. He wanted to appear to be a kind and gentle guy, so he could be deified by the Senate. Some people claim that he did it out of vanity. The following year, 176, Faustina